Thank you, Chair Henry, members of Finance and Strategic Services Planning Committee. What we thought we'd do is provide a very brief presentation as an update. The good weather is here. The city is working with a big team to introduce a set of new patio guidelines and performance standards, and we thought with the good weather coming, it's good time to give you an update. In terms of the key steps, we're working on a report with design guidelines and patio guidelines that will come to you May 29th. That's in 2 weeks' time. This is going to be a pilot project, and the reason why this is important is that we have patios that are now being reviewed and approved through a new process. We've been through a tremendous amount of construction with the LRT project. The King Street project is underway, and now is time to formalize performance standards on patios like most municipalities. We're working with various stakeholders, and I would just simply highlight the Uptown BIA in particular we've been working quite closely with. We've been working with our accessibility teams, the Region Waterloo, the LRT teams, and to present some comprehensive guidelines that are framed around patio districts in the core. We're finalizing the input as we speak right now, and we're working with businesses. We've had some strong business interest. They've been very patient, and they understand that we're under construction right now, and they're looking forward to the new performance standards and to work with the city as soon as possible. So we hope to have some businesses lined up on May 29th to have in a good position to have some patios set up. In terms of the key features of the patios, I can just give as a quick highlight without the report being provided. This is to promote patio culture in the Uptown. We have over 460 businesses in the core with over 60 restaurants and eateries. So there's a strong patio presence in the core, and we have to find some performance standards that work and promoting a culture. This is about public realm and sidewalks only. This does not apply to private property. So again, if it's a sidewalk patio, these are the tools that would apply as a pilot program. They're intended to be removable and seasonal. This is happening anyways, and it allows for street maintenance. And again, we have some standards that look about how they're removable, what do they like, and maybe the timelines. In terms of the application processes, we're refining them right now this week in terms of an application that we can receive, but we are working with businesses, and we're open to talk to any business that's interested in sidewalks and patios together. In terms of a full report, it's coming May 29th, again in a couple of weeks, and we'll have a series of recommendations as a pilot program. So we thought this is the right moment to update you through this forum and this format, and happy to answer any questions right now and or on May 29th as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and I know we'll look forward to those details in a couple of weeks, but I'll turn now to Council for questions. I saw Councillor Whaley's hand.
You have nicknamed it patio culture. In other areas of the world, they call it cafe culture, the same kind of idea, and I'm all in. This is going to be very exciting. What I do see in other jurisdictions, though, is not just coffee shops and bars and restaurants, but I also see flower shops spilling out into the street, vegetable stalls spilling out to the street, other kinds of retail spilling out in the street. Can we expect on May 29th that we'll have a broader use than just cafes?
Through you, Chair Henry. Great question, Councillor Whaley. I think in the fullness of time, the Uptown is a vibrant core, and there'll be a broad range of activities that will happen in the core. This is specifically applied to patios, and it doesn't mean restaurants. It could be other patios as well for other businesses and other opportunities. But to your point, the city is working on a set of public realm guidelines, and that will be the broader context in which this is looking at in terms of retail events, sales events, and other activities. This is the first baby step into the new Uptown, and it's a great way to start with the patio guidelines, and then to shortly after broaden it to look at other opportunities.
As a follow-up, King Street's a regional road. And with that comes a responsibility for the region to be making some decisions with respect to alcohol on the street. Typically, patio culture often, it's envisioned that have bars and cafes and coffee shops spilling out into the street. So how are we making out with the region with respect to getting them on board and the liquor license people on board to make this roll out?
Through you, Chair Henry. Another great question, Councillor Whaley. We've been working very collaboratively with the region of Waterloo. It is their right-of-way with the LRT and with the new jurisdiction, including Caroline Street. As they get through the construction phases right now, they've been working with the city on an encroachment agreement process with our Director of Legal Services. And so what we're doing is we're bridging the patio guideline work with the encroachment agreement. So the region will likely download the patio approvals and encroachment to the City of Waterloo. We've been in discussions with Shane Turner in our division just to talk about implementation that will narrow down this week. And so what I see happen is that the City of Waterloo will be the primary conduit for patio applications on city and regional roads, and we'll have an agreement structure with the region where we implement the encroachments, and the performance standards and the guidelines will allow us to kind of review and approve patios to make sure that there's wide enough sidewalks for barrier-free accessibility, to make sure there's no unnecessary obstructions along the sidewalk, to make sure that the design standards are a certain flavor. And so it's working with the region on this on King Street and Herb Street as an example.
Final supplementary, Councillor Whaley.
Thanks for indulging me, Mr. Chair. So we all envision this to be a big step forward for King Street, but there's also other streets in the core that might benefit from the patio culture spilling over. Is this King Street centric, or will the policy have a broader footprint?
Through you, Chair Henry, I left up an emergency slide just in case a question like this was asked. And so we have a map of showing the different patio zones, and what this shows is a series of patio districts that can evolve over time. And so the names will change a bit, but you have King North, King South, Willis Way, Herb, and Regina. That's where most of our patios are today, and we can envision later over time. And you must have a roadway and sidewalks wide enough to allow a patio on a sidewalk. So these are the primary corridors and streets that we'll have in our report. And as we work together, patios that are on private property, the city has just passed a new comprehensive bylaw and uptown general amendments, and there's rules and regulations for patios there. So ours is in the public realm, on sidewalks, and these are the general zones that we've identified to date. And this is why it's important to have this as a pilot project so we can fine-tune it over the next summer, fall months, and get ready for next spring when the LRT is here and when the King Street is up and running. So this will be a really well-coordinated program by next year when it's in full effect.
Thank you very much. Councillor Durrell.
Thank you, through you, Chair Henry. So I just want to make sure it's super clear. There will be patios in Uptown this year in all of those districts that you just put up. And that, I just want to make that clear, that's true.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We've been working quite closely through the Uptown BIA, the road reconstruction projects, and working with a good number of businesses. The businesses are being extremely patient and working through these details right now. And so the businesses that we're in conversation with, we hope to have a report presented to you on May 29th, and for them to be proactively engaging in their installation of patios. Some businesses may have already popped up already in certain locations other than construction zones. It's no different than any other year, so we're just working with the businesses we know of, and the ones that have patios we'll certainly follow up with, but we're not going to provide any roadblocks to patios right now, but the new guidelines subject to council approval will set the performance standards that are so important. And again, to reiterate, many businesses are being very patient and working through these standards right now.
So patience, but it also means that come this summer, that there will be patios on the public sidewalks.
Through you, Chair Henry, to be direct, yes.
Excellent. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. You have great answers, but that's all I want to hear. Okay, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this on May 29th. As Council knows, I sit on the Uptown Vision Committee, and this is something that they've been involved in as well, and I also represent you on the BIA, and they're very excited about it, and our businesses are really looking forward to it. I think one of the things that happened when LRT construction ended, pretty much ended on King Street from William to William to Willis Way was this gigantic sidewalk, and a lot of people are saying, what's going to happen here? So this is what's going to happen there, and I think it'll be really exciting. So thank you for all the work you're doing, and I cannot wait to see the patios on the public spaces this summer.
Okay, I see no further questions for Mr. Mounsey. We'll look forward to you coming back with a lot of words under your name in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you, Chair Henry.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Next up, we have the consent motion. Is there any item council would like removed from consent? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover of the consent items. Councillor Durrell, seconded by Councillor Freeman. All those in favor? Carried. Next up, we have the 2017 consolidated financial statements. Some very exciting accounting for us by Paul Hettinga. Paul?
I've been told that this is the most eagerly anticipated report of the year for council.
It is. This is, I believe, the Chartered Accountant annual social that you're having this afternoon. Unfortunately, you're doing it in chambers and not on a patio, but we're working on that. I think Councillor Durrell's already penciled in all of her June and July meetings on patios, whether they're approved or not. So, but you can give us some numbers.
So I'll just guide you through a brief presentation that goes through some of the highlights of the financial statements that we're asking you to approve today. And we also have from KPMG today here Tom Mennel and Brandon Hall, who will say a few words after my presentation as well. So the statements that are before you include both the library and the BIA fully consolidated, and the North Hydro is modified equity consolidation. So basically that means we add it to investment in Water North Hydro. You'll see it on the balance sheet in that regard. And as Tom mentioned to me on Friday, an unqualified opinion is actually a clean opinion. It doesn't mean that his firm is unqualified. It just means that is free from error. So the key highlights, overall the financial statements show an improved financial position for the city. Revenue exceeded budget in most areas, and expenditures were within budget when our unbudgeted amortization is excluded. The statements show us an audited surplus of $15.5 million. You'll have a report next on the agenda that shows an operating budget surplus of $0.2. That's part of the 15.5. Also, we collect an additional $29.2 million in revenue to be used for capital projects. And we also collected $3.5 million to be used and has been used for debt principal repayment. So those are items that have revenue but don't have expenses because they're balance sheet items. And then finally, the audited surplus was reduced by $17.4 million due to non-cash items. Obviously, amortization is the largest item of that. The equity pickup on the hydro is the other large item in that total. Reserves and reserve balances, we've actually experienced a decrease from 15 in 16 due to several infrastructure projects and the recent creation of our industrial land reserve, which will be funded from future land sales. Debt per capita has decreased once again, and we'll see some slides on that later in the presentation. And good news is that our net book value of our tangible assets has increased from $215, which is the result of our capital additions exceeding amortization, which is always something that you want to see. So this is a bar chart that just shows some of the key elements of our revenue compared to prior year and budget. So you can see that in most cases the budget has been exceeded and prior year has been exceeded. The one exception being other revenue, which comes into a revenue recognition issue because we only recognize revenue like development charge revenue and parkland revenue as we expend the dollars. So if projects are deferred, we see a big balance in the deferred revenue side. So we've collected those monies, we just haven't earned them in the eyes of accounting. On the expenditure side, again, the only thing that jumps out here is the amortization that we don't budget for, and that's accounting for about $23 million, as you can see on the last set of bars. This chart just shows the amortization compared to capital additions over the last 7 or 8 years. And what jumps out here is, again, on 2016, we've exceeded our amortization total by quite a significant amount, which has been a result of both expansion and replacement type capital projects. I think the asset management plan has indicated heavy investment is still necessary, so we want to create some cautionary tale there that there's work to be done there. And then on the reserve side, again, I mentioned the dip in 16 due to investment in the industrial land reserve. And again, the asset management plan has identified some significant needs in the future, which will lead to further decreases in the reserves. And I think the long-term financial plan will have some comments on that in the coming months and years. Debt per capita is showing a steady decrease over the last decade. The last little bump that we had was in 2014 when we issued some development charge debt. But overall, we've decreased another 6.6 over the last 10 years in our debt. But we are still high, so I think, again, it's a cautionary tale. So as of last year, we've got a financial dashboard which we'll be posting on the website, and it'll be available at the following link, and it'll have kind of the red light, green light approach that you've seen in prior years. And again, the key items there that have expressed caution are debt is decreasing, but it is still high. Reserves are decreasing, and there is a need for investment in infrastructure is what the key elements that will be coming out of that dashboard. So that concludes my presentation. I'll just pass it over to Tom, and he can say a few words, and then we can open it for questions.
Thank you, Paul. Chair Henry and members of council. As Paul mentioned, we are in a position to issue an unqualified or clean audit opinion on the consolidated financial statements of the city, subject to council's approval. We've had detailed discussions with the audit committee when we met on May the 4th, in which we reviewed the draft financial statements as well as the detailed findings of our audit. We have also prepared standalone separate audits or conducted them of the Waterloo Public Library, the Uptown Waterloo Business Improvement Area, and the trust funds of the City of Waterloo. We have a good working relationship with the finance team here, and certainly would recognize that they're dedicated to continuously improving the systems and processes of the city, and that as we've identified things over the years, they've certainly taken action to address those items that we've highlighted. I'd like to thank them for the work that they've done in assisting and preparing us in the course of our audit, and would be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for either yourself or Paul, questions from council? Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you, and this is for Paul. When I was looking at the different divisional areas, as I was digging through that in the statements, it came up about the big box stores and how they're fighting against their payment of property taxes and how that impacts us, and was going to continue to increase or continue to impact us even more severely in coming years. Well, maybe you could talk a bit about that and how we're addressing that and what we're seeing. Yeah,
thank you, Mayor. Through you, Chair Henry, the following report on the agenda has a commentary on our tax adjustments, which were significant in 2016, and while the big box stores didn't have a huge impact on it in 16, they will be a large potential deficit creator in future years. We have provided for that in our allowance for doubtful or allowance for tax adjustments, I think we call it, and we've added a significant amount to that balance. But we will also be taking on a increased and active role on our MPAC appeals and ARB decisions, so that we can ensure that the city's interests are protected in that regard.
Thank you.
Anything else on the audited financial statements report, Council? Paul, I just thought give you the opportunity to flag. Tom was mentioning the strong working relationships and areas where staff have acted on advice on continual improvement. I'm wondering if there's one or two of those from this past year that either of you noticed that you'd care to highlight at this point.
Thank you, Chair Henry. Yeah, through the audit, obviously the auditors have recommended various items over the years, and we've endeavored to follow on their recommendations, and some of those have created some very good controls over our capturing of tangible capital assets. For example, we're much cleaner in our collection and completeness of what we record as capital assets. I think the other area that has been flagged in the past is our tax receivable, which has decreased significantly year over year, and we've put in some process there. But I think it also has a strong relevancy towards the strength of our city and our economy, that our balances on tax receivable are quite favorable when compared to other municipalities. That'll be one item on the dashboard as well that you can compare to how we sit on that item.
Wondering whether Tom had anything to add on that, or since I saw him stand up.
Certainly, I think that Paul mentioned tangible capital assets, and that's a significant area within the city, and it's certainly an area of complexity, and it's one that we have seen changes made to the process that are used to capture those amounts within the financial statements, and we recognize the significant improvement there. We also are focused on the basis or the methodology with respect to the recognition of development charge revenue and the pattern that has with respect to the related expenditures, and we have seen changes that have been made to better capture that information as well. So those are two areas that I would highlight.
Thank you very much. Anything further, Council? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the consolidated financial statements. Mayor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Freeman. Any further discussion? Council, I'll simply note I very much appreciate the work of our auditors and finance team. Audit season is in some ways a very grueling season. I know that they put in extra effort at this time. I appreciate our auditors also because of the schedule of year ends have a very busy workload, so the relationship is very critical to both sides to work effectively and get that through. And I very much appreciate hearing from an outside third party just how attentive our staff is to continual improvement. I think the citizens need to understand and hear that we're continually trying to make sure that we're doing the best that we can, and we're taking all the good advice we can get on how to be more efficient and effective year over year, and there's been some good strides in the last couple. So kudos to the finance team and our outside auditors on that. So with that, all those in favor? The audited financials? Carried. Next, we have the allocation of the massive 2016 surplus this year. Very thin surplus on this. No presentation here. Any questions from Council on the annual variance reporting here? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover of the report. Councillor Durrell, seconded by Councillor Freeman. And if there are no questions, all those in favor? Carried. Don't spend it all in one place. Very important. Next up, we have the Alexandra Park property acquisition. Again, I don't believe there's a report here, Mr. Ross, but I'll look for if there's any questions of Mr. Ross. Any questions at all?
Just moving it with a comment.
Okay. Councillor Durrell moves it. Mayor Jaworski seconds. Councillor Durrell, go ahead.
This is a big deal for Uptown Waterloo. in the sense that there was just a tiny little small park that was in pretty rough shape. And I think we spent the last 3 years working to expand this park. So today, with passing of this, we are investing in that uptown neighborhood. And I know that everyone there will be thrilled to be a part of it. I also wanted to point out that in the report, it also stated that this could perhaps serve as a trail through William Street to Alexandra Street, which I think is a very important connection within our uptown core. So I hope that council will move forward with this. It is so important to Uptown's culture and that entire neighborhood. So thank you, and thanks for the hard work and the negotiating skills.
Any other comments, council? Seeing none, I'll take the vote then. All those in favor? Those opposed? Councillor Freeman, Councillor Maven? Carried. Next up, we have the award of tender RFT 1703 for the Marsland Drive reconstruction, and there's a memo from Audit Committee that's been included in here. Any questions for staff on this, council? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover. Councillor Whaley, seconded by Councillor Freeman. Any comments, council? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. And finally, we have the emergency black pipe sewer lateral replacement funding release and tender award. That goes over 3 lines, so it must be important. Audit Committee memo here. Looking for a mover there. Mover by Councillor Freeman. Can I get a seconder, and then I'll take the question. Councillor Durrell. Question, Councillor Whaley.
So black pipe has been a part of Waterloo's story on the infrastructure side for so long now. And I wonder, if you give a comment with respect to how we're doing in the battle. I'm sure that any of the black pipe that's left over must be close to imminent collapse. And I was just trying to get a picture on, how our battle is being waged. I mean, the report itself gives some specific answers to me, but I was looking for a little bit of an overview about the black pipe problem in Waterloo, how much is left to go, because they all went in approximately the same time. What's the likelihood of some kind of a big collapse happening in the distant future, and is something we should be planning for?
Through you, Chair Henry, to you, Councillor Whaley. Yes, the black pipe has been in place for 50 to 60 years now. It's actually getting close to the end of its expected service life. We are doing 40 or so replacements each year on a priority basis. We expect that to continue for the coming foreseeable future. Short term, likely. I don't have the exact numbers on how many are in place yet, and I don't know that we have compiled that information. But we have been, again, replacing them over the years, so we're getting the more significant ones. I don't expect there to be a catastrophic incidents where they all fail at the same time. Through our CCTV inspections and our evaluation, we do find that some of them are in acceptable condition, especially when you consider their age. So if we can continue at this rate right now, we can repair the significant ones where there's significant issues. And then certainly as we get farther into the future, there will be less because they will have all been replaced. I believe at some point in time, the plan is to kind of review this process. Say if we got into it for 100 years, at that point in time, you're not expecting those pipes to be, they've gone well past their service life. So we may need to revisit this program to see what our involvement should be in the future.
So I'll leave it to our CIO who works on this kind of stuff on a daily basis. But this could be. We're at 60 and 70 years now, and it could be something to flag for the future with respect to some kind of an end of life catastrophe that we didn't expect. That all of a sudden we have 500 of them go at one time. We don't know that, and is that something we should be doing a study on or giving some consideration to, more than we already have, put a little bit more emphasis on this, try to understand the potential risk and how we could mitigate it.
Through you, Chair Henry, and picking up on Mr. Quickfall's remarks, we did an inventory probably about 10 years ago now. It's maybe a little bit dated, and I don't have the exact information either. But at the time, there were roughly 4,500 black pipe laterals across the city, and we were whittling away at it. If I had to give an approximation, we're probably about 50% of the way through. But I think you've raised a valid point and something that we can circle back to council with some information on the outstanding balance and what the future life cycle might be for the remaining black pipe.
I was wondering, Phil, if you could just highlight, and it's in the report, the difference between our level of service on the black pipe laterals versus all of the other laterals, because black pipe laterals have gotten a higher level of service, particularly because of the earlier failure than anticipated. But we're starting to get to that place where any ones that are left are at a life cycle that looks like everything else in the system for which we provide a different level of service. Can you just give us a brief overview on what those look like? I think that backs up your remarks earlier about whether or not this is a program we continue as is at some point in the future.
To you, Councillor Chair Henry. That's exactly right. So with the black pipe, our level of service is that we will replace black pipe from the main to the building itself. With any other type of pipe, we would replace it we're responsible for what's in the public right-of-way, so from the main to the property line. In this case, we've gone that extra step because of the points you've mentioned regarding black pipe itself to replace it from the property, on the private side, basically from the property line to the home. So that would be something, again, we'll always be responsible for what's in the right-of-way until all the black pipe has been removed, but it may be, as we get further to and beyond the expected service life, it may be worth considering reducing that level of service so that we do not address anything on the private side.
I think that's important for sort of homeowners to understand, is that the laterals on their property are theirs in the vast majority of cases. And like a roof or like an HVAC unit or like anything else in your home, it is part of those things that do have wear and tear and that you end up being responsible for. The black pipe was a higher level because there was a faster rate of failure beyond the normal use of life. Any other questions, Council, on this particular funding release? It's been moved and seconded, so I'll look for the vote. All those in favor? That's carried. No notice of motion given at a previous meeting. Is there any of notice of motion at this meeting? Seeing none. Communications and correspondence, we have none. The region didn't send us anything. No unfinished business. Any new business, Council? Councillor Durrell.
I just wanted to remind everyone that we have a Waterloo Park project public session tomorrow night, beginning at 5:30 at Knox Church. That's it.
Thank you very much. That's on everything and anything going on in and around Waterloo Park. It's a humdinger. Councillor Durrell, you apparently have something else.
We also have a Union Street crossing public engagement session, which will be downstairs in City Hall on Thursday. There's lots happening in Uptown right now.
Yeah, always good stuff happening. Anything else, councillors, under new business? Any questions, Council? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Durrell, seconded by Councillor Freeman. All those in favor, we stand adjourned.